Hello, everyone. So we have let's see. What is today? Today is the 17th of December. That means we have 8 whole days till Christmas Day. And it's been a while since I've done a video, and certainly at this festive season of the year, I want to focus a little bit on festive entertainment. And I want to kick things off by persuading you all, if you haven't already, to read this book. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. You know the story because you've probably seen one of the over 100 adaptations of it for film and television and also the stage. But despite that fact that it's a very popular story and it's been adapted a bajillion times, there's still a lot of people who haven't actually read Dickens' original. And I want to persuade you that you should read it because it remains relevant. And I'm going to persuade you in 4 significant quotes. So, if you'll permit me to put my reading glasses on, because I'm old. Went to the movies today, and for the first time, somebody asked me if I wanted a senior ticket. Okay, well, I gotta be prepared for that. Okay. So, the first quote is a description of Christmas from Scrooge's nephew, Fred, who has repeatedly tried to soften his uncle's heart and get his uncle to dine with him on Christmas Day. And Scrooge has, of course, dismissed Christmas with his famous line, "Bah, humbug." And, of course, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, humbug means BS. In other words, Scrooge is saying Christmas is a load of BS. And here is how Fred responds. "I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it has come round, apart from the veneration due its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, the only time I know of in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good. And I say, God bless it." So, why is this quote relevant? First of all, the idea of seeing people as fellow passengers to the grave and not another race of people bound on other journeys, not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. This is Fred's takedown of our tendency to think in terms of us versus them. The idea that we are doing things right, we have the right ideas. They're not like us. They're not quite from the same species as us. This is, of course, othering and pushing other people over to the side, saying they don't have anything in common with us. We're us, they're them. At Christmas time, what makes this time special to Fred is that people's notion of us expands. It grows bigger. We see other people not as them, but as, well, part of us, part of a universal us. Also, it is a good takedown of the whole idea of everything being transactional, that things have value based on how much you can get out of them. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? What do I have to gain? After all, That's why Scrooge dismisses Christmas. It's a time for finding yourself, as he says, a year older and not an hour richer. And Fred doesn't really have a lot of time for that way of looking at things. He sees value in spiritual gains as well as material gains, and that's why he believes the holiday has done him good. So that's quote number one. Another quote that I believe keeps this book relevant year after year. Sorry about this. Shortly after Fred leaves the office and Scrooge goes home after a day's work, he encounters the ghost of his old partner Jacob Marley, who comes to him weighed down with heavy chains, mostly made up, as the text points out, of cash boxes, because Marley and Scrooge were moneylenders. Or, well, Marley was a moneylender, Scrooge still is. And when Scrooge says, "You are always a good man of business," to explain why Marley should not feel guilty or ashamed or should not be punished for the miserly way that he led his life. "You are always a good man of business." "Business!" cried the ghost, wringing its hands again. "Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business." This is an echo of the sentiments of John Donne, who wrote a couple of hundred years before Dickens, that no man is an island unto himself, and every man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind. So Marley has realized that he has failed in his lifetime to be involved in mankind. It's too late for him, but it's not too late for Scrooge. So the next quotes really work as a pair. They're a before and after kind of deal. This again takes place in the first part of the story after Fred leaves Scrooge's office. A couple of charity collectors enter the office and try to persuade Scrooge to donate to their fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. And this is Scrooge's reaction. "I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I hope to support the establishments that I mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there." He's referring to the workhouses, the poorhouses, the treadmill, the prisons. "Many can't go there, and many would rather die." "If they would rather die," said Scrooge, "they had better do it and decrease the surplus population." Pretty harsh words. Pretty cold. And sometime later, these words come back to haunt him. He is on his journey with the ghost of Christmas Present. And he and the ghost of Christmas Present are looking in on the family of his clerk, Bob Cratchit. And Bob Cratchit has a little son who is lame, he is disabled, and has one foot in the grave, Tiny Tim. And as Scrooge is watching Tiny Tim, something starts to happen inside him. he starts to experience weird feelings of empathy and compassion and concern. And he asks the ghost whether Tiny Tim will live. And the ghost replies that if the shadows he sees remain unaltered by the future, then Tiny Tim will die before Christmas comes again. But if he be like to die, then he'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Man, said the ghost, if man you be in heart, not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you have discovered what the surplus is and where it is. Will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. Oh God, to hear the insect on the leaf pronouncing on the too much life among his hungry brothers in the dust. So, this year, particularly over the last few months, as SNAP benefits have been threatened by government shutdowns, there's been a lot of talk about the poor and about what the poor are owed. And in a lot of the things that people have said, I hear echoes of Scrooge and his original statement. Things like, well, if they weren't lazy, if they weren't idle, if they worked hard enough, they wouldn't need SNAP. They wouldn't need benefits. They wouldn't need assistance. If all they have to do is work hard, and then they won't need government handouts. They're just too lazy. They don't want to work hard enough. And one gem that I heard on social media, on YouTube in fact, you don't deserve pleasure if you're broke. There have even been pastors who have called benefits like SNAP ungodly, that it goes against God to assist people at or below the poverty level in this way. Well, Dickens didn't have a lot of patience for that way of thinking, because Dickens knew what it was to be poor. A lot of the people who are making these comments about the poor and about SNAP benefits and about people being lazy and it's their fault for not working hard enough, blah-de-blah-de-blah, most of them have never really known what it is to actually be poor. But Dickens did. He knew what it was to work in a blacking factory as a child. And so he's writing about, when he writes about the poor, not just here but in his other works as well, he's writing from a degree of experience. So it's important to bear that in mind. And that's one of the reasons why this book remains relevant, why I read it semi-annually, and why I think you should all read it. Why do people keep making adaptations of this work? Why are there so many? And I think the reasons are twofold. First of all, I think at some point in our lives, at some moments in our lives, we have all been Scrooge. He's one of literature's great anti-heroes. And in him, we can see our own baser elements, the part of us that gets impatient, that wants to avoid pain by avoiding people. I am a rock, I am an island, as Simon and Garfunkel sing. Many of us have been there at different times in our lives. And we do feel at times impulses to be selfish, to withhold our treasures, not just material but spiritual as well. And yet, this book, as we follow Scrooge on his journey, this book shows us we can do better. We can always do better. We can call upon our better angels and let them prevail. Thank you.